Let me say at the onset that it is an honor to chair the work of this 14th session of the Committee on Science and Technology. I look forward to working closely with each and every one of you to ensure that we complete all the work assigned to the committee and report the results back to the COP next week. We have quite a substantial set of issues, and I will be personally engaged with the facilitators and parties in the coming days so that work can be expedited and concluded by 6th September. This session of the CST will focus on the objectives and coordinating activities identified in the work program of the Science Policy Interface for the biennium 2018 to 2019 as outlined in Decision 21/COP13. I am hoping we would conduct the proceedings in such a way as to ensure thematic dialogue between parties and the SPI to enable the formulation of policy-oriented recommendations. The organization of work of the session is designed to facilitate the activities in this respect with a view to formulating draft decisions for consideration and, as appropriate, adoption by the COP. The SPI has produced 3 technical reports, each contain policy proposals which the Secretariat has shaped into policy-oriented recommendations, which will be put before you for consideration. I encourage parties to carefully study these documents so as to enhance negotiations. Before we turn to the adoption of our agenda, it is with great pleasure that I give the floor to the Executive Secretary of the UNCCD, Mr. Ibrahim Thiaw, to present some opening remarks. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, all, distinguished guests, friends, and colleagues. India has a rich history in mathematics and science. An ancient Indian philosopher named Kanada, for example, was among the world's first natural scientists. His name, translated from the Sanskrit, means atom eater. It suits him well. He is credited with developing the foundations of an atomistic approach to physics. One of Kanada's most influential assertions was that all that is knowable is based on motion. We know land degradation is happening. We know the problem is moving fast. Land use change that has already transformed 75% of the world's land area from its natural state. With this land transformation, all too often comes land degradation. Judging from what parties have reported to this convention, we have harmed almost a quarter of our lands in the last 15 years. Drought frequency, intensity, length, and extent are all increasing in parallel. Combined, the trends undermine the livelihoods of 3.2 billion people and place 1 million species at risk of extinction. All the major scientific assessments on land degradation have one common and unambiguously clear message. We are over-consuming the land on which all our futures depend. The alarm has been sounded. We need to move collectively on land degradation. But as Ernest Hemingway, the American writer, once put it, we should never confuse motion with action. We need to move with a sense of purpose and act with a sense of urgency. This convention, and specifically this Committee on Science and Technology, has a critical role to play. We, collectively, are tasked with creating the enabling policy environment that will lead to action. You, as stated in your terms of reference, drafted during the first conference of the parties 22 years ago, must provide the conference of the parties with information and advice on scientific and technological matters relating to combating desertification and mitigating the effects of drought to ensure that its decisions and ultimately our actions are based on the most up-to-date scientific knowledge. CST 13 set the stage for your work this week. It was at that session where you tasked the science policy interface with several important tasks. And as you have learned in the official documents, the SPI team, consisting of 15 independent scientists, 5 CST Bureau members, and 5 observer organizations, has met the challenge. Before you will find numerous proposals for action based on the synthesis and assessments of the latest science. These proposals are communicated to you in official documents as policy-oriented recommendations. While a few address issues of process, the vast majority answer the question, what can we as policymakers do now? The topics of these proposals include, among other things, achieving the multiple benefits that can be derived from soil organic carbon through sustainable land management in the context of land degradation neutrality. All the dimensions and the challenges of creating an enabling environment for land degradation neutrality. The land drought nexus and the role of the new paradigm of drought-smart land management approaches. An approach to monitoring the strategic objective on droughts. The links between the flows of consumption and production and land, and finally, increasing the potential positive impact of restoration and rehabilitation. The Ewe people of West Africa, where both the chair and myself came from, have a proverb which captures the challenge in front of you. Wisdom is like a baobab tree. No one individual can embrace it. Achieving consensus on policy recommendations is never easy, but I would suggest it has never been more crucial. As Mahatma Gandhi once said, the earth, the air, the land, and the water are not an inheritance from our forefathers, but on loan from our children. So we have to hand these over to them, at least as it was handed over to us, end of quote. We are looking forward to guidance on sustainable land management, indeed, enriching land degradation neutrality. Strong policy recommendations from this CST will help ensure that the land which we have borrowed from our children is returned to them in good or even better conditions than when they loaned it to us. I wish you success and great wisdom this week. Let's move urgently, let us act purposefully, and let us grow the future together. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Thiaw for this inspiring statement. distinguished delegates, I now open the floor for statements by the representatives of regional and interest groups. Delegates wishing to take the floor are invited to press the button. Also, in the interest of time, may I request that your statements are concise and limited to a maximum of 5 minutes. I now give the floor to the representative of Eswatini on behalf of the Regional Implementation Annex for Africa.
Thank you, Chair. The UNCCD Executive Secretary, CST Bureau members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am pleased to make this statement on behalf of the Africa Group. The Africa Group, first of all, wishes to thank the government of the Republic of India for hosting us in this beautiful city of Greater Noida, New Delhi. The greenness of this city cannot go unnoticed. We are already enjoying the very warm hospitality of the Indian people since we arrived. The 14th session of the Conference of Parties of the Convention and its Committee for Science and Technology is being held at the back of the recent release of 3 major global assessment reports relating to land by the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, IBEPS, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. The reports indicate that land use change has had the greatest adverse impact on Earth, biodiversity, climate, food security, and the livelihood of its people than any other drivers. These reports also called for concerted action to bring about change that would secure the future of life on Earth. We strongly believe that we are able to arrest and reverse the existential threats to land and human security through the design and implementation of transformative measures. We are concerned that the real progress towards avoiding, reducing, and reversing land degradation and accelerating positive achievements for people and for ecosystem can be attained when the conceptualization of such measures to address land degradation and desertification are firmly rooted in science, and when deliberate actions are designed to ensure inclusive implementations. We firmly believe that this session of the CST would enable us to discover ways to address the knowledge gaps as well as the scientific and technological capacity hurdles and associated barriers to inclusive policy implementations in our quest to achieve land degradation neutrality. In the light of these convictions, we welcome the agenda for the 14th session of the Conference of Parties of the Convention and pledged our full and active participation in all the proceedings of the CST. Finally, we wish to express our gratitude to you, Executive Secretary, your incredible dedicated staff, as well as members of the Science Policy Interface, for working hard to prepare and place at our disposal in less than 18 months the excellent document and the policy briefs to support our deliberations. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Eswatini. I give the floor to the representative of Finland on behalf of the European Union and its member states.
Chair, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to deliver this statement on behalf of the EU and its member states. The EU and its member states would like to thank the Government of India for hosting the 14th session of the Committee of Science and Technology, as well as the Secretariat, the CST Bureau, and the Science Policy Interface, SPI, for all the work to prepare this important event. Let me confirm that the European Union attaches great importance to this. Science is key to the Convention. Sound scientific understanding of the causes and processes of land degradation and desertification is a prerequisite for designing effective measures to avoid, reduce, and reverse land degradation. At the same time, science is central for monitoring and evaluating progress towards combating desertification and restoring degraded land. Ladies and gentlemen, since COP11, the SPI has played a central role in providing scientific advice to the Convention process. In order to confirm and strengthen this role, COP13 decided to extend the SPI's mandate up to 2023. Looking at the results of the SPI work program 2018 to 2019, we can say this was the right decision. The SPI was able to continue developing concrete science-based publications directly relevant for the implementation of the Convention. Particular reference deserves the elaboration of guidance for creating an enabling framework for land degradation neutrality. This report underlines the urgent need to create regulatory and socio-economic framework conditions that incentivize sustainable land management and disincentives unsustainable practices. This includes responsible land governance, tenure security, access to agricultural extension services, finance, and markets that meet the needs of smallholders. Equally relevant is the SPI's technical guidance on strategies to maintain, increase, and monitor soil organic carbon. Thanks to its multifunctional roles, soil organic carbon lies at the crossroads of all three Rio Conventions. We also appreciate the SPI's work on drought management. The respective report is policy relevant and highlights the role of sustainable land management in proactively reducing drought risks. Finally, we welcome the proposed tiered approach for future reporting on a drought indicator. Ladies and gentlemen, in view of the successful implementation of the work program 2018 to 2019, we would like to recognize with appreciation the personal commitment of the SPI members and thank them for their work. At the same time, however, we want to underline that the SPI should make maximum use of synergies and collaborations with other technical partners in order to use synergies and avoid duplication when carrying out its work program. The capacity of the SPI is limited, and therefore we consider it key that the SPI engages in partnerships with a cooperative spirit. This will allow for leveraging resources and expertise and will contribute to increasing the convention's outreach. Ladies and gentlemen, with regard to the work program 2020 to 2021, we agree with the priorities outlined. Land use planning and integrated landscape management are central for LDN. Given the mixed experience with the actual implementation of land use plans, we want to emphasize the need to focus on workable rather than theoretical solutions. As a final point, we want to welcome the ongoing efforts of the Secretariat and WOCAT to improve knowledge management and dissemination of best practices for sustainable land management. The European Union and its member states are looking forward to the upcoming deliberations and stand ready to contribute actively to the success of the CST at this 14th Conference of the Parties. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the representative of Finland. I now give the floor to the representative of Bhutan on behalf of Asia Pacific Group.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity for Bhutan to deliver this opening statement on behalf of the Asia Pacific Group at this 14th session of the Committee on Science and Technology. As this is the first time I'm taking the floor, let me first appreciate the Republic of India for warm hospitality and arrangements for hosting the 14th session of Science and Technology Committee. Mr. Chair, as Asia Pacific is home to half of the poorest of the globe, and the majority heavily rely on small-scale family farming and are being severely affected by land degradation, drought, and climate change. Asia Pacific is also facing challenges of increased population, rapid urbanization, in parallel with a fast-growing middle-class population. These harsh realities have caused increased demand on food, fiber, water, energy, infrastructure, waste management, and intensifies land demand and land use competition. Consequently, there is a high expectation for improved ecosystem services, land restoration, and sustainable land management. Science and technology support in these areas are extremely vital. Mr. Chair, the LDN approach provides the opportunity to keep the land in balance for food security and other ecosystem services. The Asia-Pacific region welcomes the SPI recommendations on improving LDN-enabling environments and recommended measures to account soil organic carbon and planning carbon-sensitive activities. It provides a scientific basis for country parties to further improve relevant policies, including improving land tenure security, development of innovative financing, and partnership with private sectors. The Asia-Pacific region encourages the Secretariat, in collaboration with other international and regional organizations, to support the improvement of affected parties' capacity to create enabling environment. Mr. Chair, the Asia-Pacific region is the most disaster-prone region as it experiences severe droughts and floods frequently. We appreciate the SPI recommendation on strengthening the interlinkages of land, water, and drought policies. We recognize that the land and water management are strongly linked with drought mitigation and risk management. However, to optimize land uses under different land use demands, there is a need to enhance cross-sectoral collaboration and coordination and capacity in using integrated information. Enhanced partnership and collaboration with relevant international institutions and organizations to support national and local capacity building are urgently needed. The development of land The development of land user-friendly tools enable land and water users to implement integrated land use planning and land management are also needed. The Asia-Pacific region acknowledges the SPI coordination activities with other intergovernmental scientific panels, improved UNCCD's science profile in the international arena. It improves synergies and strengthens the scientific basis of UNCCD policy making. The Asia-Pacific region appreciates CST in collaboration with the WMO and other institutions who have prepared in such a short time since Guyana Creek 17. These recommendations on a framework for reporting and monitoring the strategy's objective on drought, including 3 progress indicators. It provides a good basis for parties to consider the criteria and approach according to national conditions and circumstances. Mr. Chair, we appreciate the efforts made by the Secretariat in the establishment and development of the Knowledge Hub and launching of the Drought Toolbox. However, in consideration of the language barrier to the local land users, Asia-Pacific region strongly recommends the Secretariat to cooperate with national, regional, and international institutions to make use of the technologies to translate into local language and direct benefits to the land users. In addition, the Asia-Pacific region has a long history of implementing land use and management best practices related to cropping, grazing, forestry, agroforestry, soil and water conservation, water management, rainwater harvesting, adapting to different soil and climate circumstances. These technologies, knowledge, and know-how need to be transmitted to more land users and also need for upgraded by introducing new advanced technologies. We encourage UNCCD Knowledge Hub to diversify its knowledge sources to include traditional knowledge through regional cooperation while ensuring information quality. Mr. Chair, finally, we believe enhancing further science technology support is one of the most essential components for effective implementation of the convention. We will welcome the SPI. The SPI include both land and drought issues in their next work program. We look forward very much to further discussion on the work program in the following days. I thank you very much.
Thank you, the representative of Bhutan. I give the floor to the representative of Colombia on behalf of the Regional Implementation Annex for Latin America and the Caribbean.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving Colombia the floor. We are speaking on behalf of our region at this very important event of COP14. Distinguished Presidents, Vice Presidents and delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I speak on behalf of the countries as part of Annex 3 of Latin American and Caribbean, and we'd like to welcome all the distinguished delegates and states parties to the UNCCD. We'd also like to express our thanks to the government and the people of the Republic of India and to the beautiful city of New Delhi for their hospitality and for organizing or helping to organize COP14 of the UNCCD, as well as meetings of its subsidiary bodies. We'd also like to thank the Secretariat of the Convention for organizing such an important event. And we'd also like to thank the various agencies of the United Nations and civil society for also taking part. President, the region of Latin America and the Caribbean is a mega-diverse and vulnerable region to the impacts of climate change. But it's also a region rich in natural resources and with a great diversity of ecosystems. Many of these, though, are currently threatened and affected by processes of degradation, desertification, and drought events. As a region, we would like to recognize the fundamental role played by the Committee on Science and Technology, CST, and the Science Policy Interface, the SPI, for their extensive work in order to provide reliable information and reliable assessments in terms of the fight against desertification and mitigating the effects of drought, as well as promoting dialogue amongst decision makers in order to combat these issues. Within the context of meeting the goals and targets of the Sustainable Development Goals under the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, GRULAC recognizes the importance of the implementation of strategies which help us to mitigate and rehabilitate areas affected by desertification and drought, which promote land degradation neutrality by strengthening synergies amongst the 3 Rio Conventions and existing scientific panels to develop and provide scientific information which enables us to implement policies to help improve the quality of life of the people affected. In this regard, we would like to highlight in particular the scientific reports that have helped to thematically set out our positions in the fight against land degradation, desertification and drought. For example, the special report on climate change by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, the thematic assessment on land degradation and restoration by the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, IPBES. We'd also like to recognize the contribution of the Intergovernmental Technical Panel on Soils of the FAO and the Global Soil Partnerships of the FAO for their recommendations on organic carbon in soil. Looking at Decision 21 and 29 of COP13, we believe that it's essential to achieve comprehensive management of drought and mitigate its effects, taking into account that our region is greatly affected by moderate and extreme drought. Drought is one of the main factors which leads to food insecurity and water insecurity globally. It directly affects communities, reducing agricultural production and making it difficult to access food and drinking water. Taking into account what I've just said, we'd like to highlight the work of the Committee on Science and Technology, CST, and the SPI for setting out and demonstrating the close links between the use and management of land and drought. And this is also linked to the use and availability of water. On this topic, we call for the creation of alliances and the strengthening of the means of implementation so that developing countries can improve their technology in order to face up and implement and design mitigation strategies for drought at social, cultural, and economic level, and mitigate their direct impacts on and indirect impacts on ecosystems, biodiversity, and soils. We call on all parties to the Convention to continue developing and strengthening their national policy instruments for the management of drought. These should also contribute to awareness raising amongst decision makers on the urgent need to face up to this issue and strengthen action in terms of early warning and mitigation measures for the impacts of these issues on communities and the environment. In this regard, reiterate that in order to achieve the effective implementation of the Convention to prevent, control and push back the process of desertification, land degradation and mitigate the effects of drought, we require more resources in a sufficient and timely and effective manner. This can be financial and technology, as well as the creation of alliances and strengthening or capacity building for interested parties. Therefore, we urge our developed partners and other partners for development to renew their commitments to the Convention. President, distinguished delegates, we thank you for your valuable contribution to developing and carrying out this COP14 of the UNCCD. We'd like to thank the Executive Secretariat and the Global Mechanism for their excellent work, reiterating the commitment of the countries of GRULAC to strengthen the fight against desertification and land degradation, and mitigating the effects of drought, in order to benefit present and future generations. Thank you very much for your time.
I thank you, representative of Colombia. I give the floor to the representative of Malta on behalf of the Regional Implementation Annex 4, Northern Mediterranean.
Chair, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to deliver the statement on behalf of the Northern Mediterranean region and its 12 affected country members. The Northern Mediterranean region would like to express its deep gratitude to the Government of India and the City of New Delhi for hosting the 14th session of the Committee on Science and Technology. We would also like to take this opportunity to extend our thanks to the Secretariat, the CST Bureau, and the SPI for the work done that culminates with this event. Ladies and gentlemen, a comprehensive understanding of the causes and processes of desertification, land degradation, and drought is paramount to this convention. Science legitimizes and emphasizes the need for a land degradation neutral world and provides the tools to avoid, reduce, and reverse land degradation. Concurrently, science provides a quantitative and standardized approach for monitoring and evaluating the progress made by parties towards achieving land degradation neutrality. The Science Policy Interface has played a key role in providing quality technical advice to the Convention since COP11. The success the SPI had during its 2018-2019 work program is very encouraging, and we are glad the COP13 decided to extend its mandate up to 2023. The Northern Mediterranean region recognizes and values the SPI's commitment and its sterling work. A key contribution is the creation of an enabling framework for LDN. The report emphasizes the need to create a regulatory and socio-economic framework that disincentivizes unsustainable practices and incentivizes sustainable land use management. We are in agreement with the priorities proposed in the 2020 to 2021 work program. We emphasize the need for a focus on practical and feasible LDN solutions through land use planning and integrated landscape management. The value of soil organic carbon is common to all three conventions. The SPI appreciates this and has developed technical guidance on strategies to maintain, increase, and monitor soil organic carbon. The Northern Mediterranean region would like to emphasize the importance of synergies between the conventions and urges the SPI to maximize its collaboration with other technical partners. We appreciate the SPI has a finite capacity and suggest it engages in partnerships with a collaborative and cooperative spirit. This will maximize the efficiency with which resources are used and increase the convention's outreach and influence. The SPI has also worked on drought management. The reports highlight the role of sustainable land management has in proactively reducing drought risk. The Northern Mediterranean region welcomes the proposed tiered approach for future reporting on a drought indicator. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Northern Mediterranean region, we are eagerly looking forward to the forthcoming deliberations and are keen to actively contribute towards the continued success of the CST. I thank you for your attention.
I thank you, the representative of Malta. I give the floor to the representative of Russia on behalf of the Regional Implementation Annex for Central and Eastern Europe.
Уважаемый председатель,
Chairman, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the parties, the convention belonging to Region 5 of Central and Eastern Europe, I'd like to thank the Government of India for organizing this 14th meeting of the parties and the 14th session of the Committee on Science and Technology. We'd like to express our gratitude to the Secretariat and to the Global Mechanism of the UNCCD for coordinating the work and supporting our countries in the area of development, science, and technology that will contribute to the prevention of land degradation, droughts, and desertification, and ensuring neutral balance in terms of land degradation. We'd like to highlight the fact that scientific support of strategic activities of the UNCCD is extremely important because in the area of land use, we still have quite a few unresolved problems that require the coordination of scientific research at the global level, requiring a global methodology for the assessment and monitoring of land degradation, and also ensuring harmonized national approaches. It is with great satisfaction that we note that the efforts of the UNCCD, its group of experts, and the SPI, the global mechanism, do create the foundations for promoting national research. And this in turn also enriches global knowledge and culture that would contribute to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. We're very pleased to inform this meeting that in our region, the last several years, we have created and developed several scientific coordination centers that actively cooperate with scientific organizations, not only in the area of Central and Eastern Europe, but also with our neighbors and partners from other regions, in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Northern Mediterranean. In this respect, as we look forward into the future, we see that it is highly promising and important to organize regional and interregional scientific conferences where scientists working in the area of desertification, land degradation, and drought can exchange their experience and knowledge and also contribute to the development of effective technologies and practices. And in this, we look forward to the continued support of the Secretariat, the Global Mechanism, and other bodies of the Convention. For our region, even more than for other regions, what is important are new initiatives of the UNCCD in preventing and fighting droughts, ensuring sustainable and peaceful use of forests, and the rational use of peatlands, preventing and monitoring of dust storms, and global transport of dust. The scientists from our region have acquired great experience in this area, and we are ready to share our knowledge with other countries as we implement strategic activities of the Convention. In conclusion, I'd like to express our conviction that the countries of the region of Central and Eastern Europe are open for constructive dialogue for the development of decisions of CSD14 that will contribute to the full implementation of the UNCCD strategy, the SDGs, and improve scientific knowledge and technologies at the global level. We wish participants full success in their work here. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Russia. I will now give the floor to the representative of Environment and Monitoring Group on behalf of the civil society organizations.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as we are reminded on a daily basis, we're experiencing a global climate crisis. The impacts of anthropogenic climate change are impacting on people and planet in exponential ways. However, scientific knowledge is also expanding exponentially, and we must ensure that it serves humanity in addressing our self-made crisis. In recent years, the mantra of this convention has been land degradation neutrality, and much as this concept has been useful and work on its metrics has added value to our efforts, let's acknowledge that like the MDGs, it is time to move on from the rather outdated and unambitious concept of LDN. What we need is land optimized. We must be driven by an unstoppable ambition, or we will be burned up by an unstoppable disaster. Much of agriculture's considerable contribution to global warming can and must be reversed, and this convention must find practical ways to support parties in ensuring that carbon stays in soils, that soil organic carbon is indeed increased. Let's place the fluxing of N2O from nitrogenous fertilizers in the spotlight. And let's get serious about weaning the world's agribusinesses and farmers from dependency on N from the bag. As CSOs working at grassroots level with land users around the world, our practice inhabits the interface between all of the MEAs and the national and local priorities and frameworks. At this level, our work is integrated. We do not operate in the silos of bureaucracies and disciplines. And we encourage the CST to embrace the challenges of a world that has been failed by outdated ways of thinking, planning, and acting, and to include all relevant knowledge in finding integrated solutions. Transformation demands transdisciplinarity in science. Reflecting on the achievements of the Science Policy Interface in the context of its work program for the biennium 2018-19, we appreciate the refined guidance that has been provided for implementation of land degradation neutrality, as well as the support for the adoption and implementation of land-based interventions for drought management and mitigation. We would like to express our appreciation for the spirit in which the SPI has engaged with civil society in accordance with the encouragement provided by the previous COP to the SPI to, quote, continue fostering partnerships with scientific bodies and institutions, international organizations, CSOs, and other relevant stakeholders, and invite the representatives of these entities to its meetings as external observers when feasible, with a view to strengthening substantive exchanges and collaboration. I believe the SPI has operated very much in this spirit. As the world slowly awakens to the need to retain and enhance the capacity of the biosphere to sequester carbon, the vital links between the Rio Conventions have become ever clearer. In collaboration with the IPCC and IPBES, the SPI has substantially contributed to creating these elusive synergies that have so long been sought. The recent policy-oriented publications by the SPI are good examples of vehicles for knowledge mobility from the scientific world into that of political decision makers. The CSOs represented as observers at this COP are aware that hard decisions must urgently be taken by those very decision makers before the world burns to a post-apocalyptic ash. CSOs welcome the aspect of the SPI work plan for the provision of science-based evidence on the potential contribution of integrated land use planning and integrated landscape management to positive transformative change in the context of LDN. Land use planning must be prioritized, including planning within the context of industrial and urban development, which need not destroy the Earth's ability to breathe and to cool itself. Objective 2 of the proposed work plan proposes the provision of science-based evidence on the approaches for the assessment and monitoring of the resilience of vulnerable populations and ecosystems to drought. In these times of environmental trauma, in which people are contributing to the current crisis through a toxic mix of greed and ignorance, it is abundantly clear that the SPI must mobilize not only the natural sciences, but also the social sciences in order to provide deeper insight into the motivation of land users to conserve land-based resources in the context of their socio-ecological systems. Regulation and incentives will be essential tools for transforming land use practices, and these must be informed by the best insights into human responses that the sciences can provide. We appreciate the emphasis on coordination of this work with the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services and with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, as well as the Intergovernmental Technical Panel on Soils. We wish the delegates wisdom and focus in these deliberations and look forward to seeing positive proposals going forward to the COP. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Environment Monitoring Group. I now invite the committee to turn to agenda item 1A, adoption of the agenda and organization of work. The provisional agenda for the 14th session is contained in document ICCDCOP14/CST1, and the proposed organization of work is contained in the annex of the same document. Are there any comments on the provisional agenda? May I take it that the committee wishes to adopt the provisional agenda contained in document ICCD/COP14/CST1 and the tentative schedule of work for the 14th session contained in the annex of the same document? Hearing no objection, it's so decided. Under sub-item B of item 1, election of officers other than the chair of the Committee on Science and Technology, appointment of the rapporteur of the committee. Delegates will recall that the chair and the 4 vice chairs of the committee were elected during COP13, and that one of the vice chairs shall be appointed by the committee at the opening of this session to discharge the functions of the rapporteur. At its meeting in December 2017, the COP nominated Mr. Ahmet Senyaz of Turkey to serve as rapporteur of the Committee on Science and Technology. I invite him to join us here on the podium. I now invite the committee to turn to agenda item 2, items resulting from the work program of the Science Policy Interface for the biennium 2018 to 2019. This morning, our meeting will address item 2A, entitled Refined Guidance for Implementation of Land Degradation Neutrality, under Objective 1, for which you have before you document ICCD/COP14/CST2. I will first give the floor to the UNCCD Secretariat to introduce the agenda sub-item. Mr. Baron R., you have the floor.
Agenda item 2 focuses upon the first objective of the SPI from the previous biennium, which is the refinement of land degradation neutrality for implementation and its 2 sub-objectives.
Thank you, Mr. Orr. I now give the floor to 4 representatives of the UNCCD Science Policy Interface, who will introduce the document ICCD COP14/CST/2 as follows. Ms. Mariam Akhtar Schuster will introduce SPI Objective 1, which includes 2 sub-objectives. Mr. Jean-Luc Schott and Mr. Emias Batemariam will then present sub-objective 1.1, and Ms. Mariodi Sanchez Santivanes will present sub-objective 1.2. Ms. Akhtar Schuster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and it's a great honor for the SPI to have been invited by the delegates to introduce the work it has done during the past biennium. I would now like to give an introduction to SPI Objective 1 on providing refined guidance for the implementation of land degradation neutrality, which is outlined in the document CST2, which you have in front of you. So by its decision 21 at COP13, the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification adopted the Science Policy Interface Work Program for the biennium 2018-2019 as outlined in the annex to this decision. I would now like to introduce Objective 1 of this work program, which should provide refined guidance for the implementation of land degradation neutrality. This Objective 1 is subdivided into 2 sub-objectives. The first one is to provide advice on the design and implementation of LDN-related policies and initiatives that bring about multiple environmental and development benefits and synergies with other Rio conventions. Sub-objective 1.2 should provide science-based evidence on the potential contribution of LDN to enhancing well-being, livelihoods, as well as the environmental conditions of people affected by desertification, land degradation, and drought. I would now like to give you a brief overview of how we came from this decision 21 at COP13 to the official document which lies in front of you, CST2, on policy-oriented recommendations resulting from the guidance for the implementation of land degradation neutrality under both sub-objectives which I had just outlined. The development process undertaken to address these 2 sub-objectives had the following structure, which was designed by the SPI to implement both objectives. Under the leadership of both SPI co-chairs, 2 SPI working groups were established right at the start, and each SPI working group was co-led by 2 people, by 2 members of the SPI. Both the SPI working groups worked in parallel. Both developed a concept for their specific sub-objective. This concept provided the outline and the timeline for the implementation of the work of this specific sub-objective, and the work finally led to the development of the technical report. Right from the start, it was very clear to the SPI that both working groups and both sub-objectives are interrelated and should work closely together. Therefore, the SPI co-chairs at the start of the work identified a coordinating scientific contributor within the SPI, a person who would continuously and regularly check that the communication between both teams continues and that the exchange is there so that both groups together provide refined guidance for the implementation of the LDN as assigned to the SPI under Objective 1 of its work program. Each SPI working group, however, had its own way of working. The SPI Objective 1.1 had a more methodological approach, whereas the Objective 1.2 working group had provided a framework which should provide the elements of an enabling environment to implement LDN, and also to provide incentives to implement and to develop this enabling environment, including the measuring and monitoring of soil organic carbon. Although both groups took different approaches to implement their work, they came up with similar outcomes. So in both reports, 1.1 and 1.2, you find issues targeting gender responses, LDN interventions. You find the need identified for various national capacity building to measure and monitor the implementation of LDN measures. And what we also found is that effective participation of local communities and stakeholders in the LDN planning as well as implementation processes would need to be considered. Finally, I would like to point out that both reports, and this is the usual case with all SPI reports, which you have seen since 2015, all these reports undergo a rigorous scientific review process, which is three-phased. The process of review starts with the internal scientific review, which then leads to a very rigorous external scientific peer review, also undertaken by people who are identified as experts on the issues which the SPI is targeting. And the third phase of the review includes the COP Bureau. And based on this three-phased review process, the SPI develops and finalizes a peer-reviewed technical reports, which you have in printed version at this COP. Many thanks, by the way, to the Secretariat who provided technical support to get these reports printed on time. And these peer-reviewed technical reports finally have led to the official UNCCD document CST2, which is now in front of you. These are the two reports. These are the covers of both reports for Objective 1.1 and 1.2. Both have informed the document CST2, and these are available at this COP. And finally, to give the SPI a face, I would like to inform you that the 10th SPI meeting took place here in Delhi on the 1st and 2nd of September, where we are still in a working mode. So although our reports have been developed, we have continued to work here, and we will still be at your disposal if any questions are required for clarification. And with this, I thank you for your kind attention, and I hand over to the chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aktashuta. I now turn to Mr. Jean-Luc Schott and Emias Batimeria. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Okay, distinguished delegate, good morning. to provide advice on the design and implementation of LDN-related policies and initiatives that bring about multiple environmental and development benefits and synergies with other Rio conventions, in particular for climate change and adaptation and mitigation action, which was one of the COP decisions for addressing SPI work plan. During his work program from 2018 to 2019, SPI addressed soil organic carbon as a pivotal factor contributing to these multiple environmental and development benefits, with the biggest gaps in measuring and monitoring. Soil organic matter gives life to soil. Soil organic matter is pivotal for multifunctional benefits from sustainable land management SLM. It combats drought, improves water conservation, improves soil fertility, nutrient retention and availability, improves soil health, reduce soil disease, promote and increase high soil biodiversity, reduce risk of crusting and compaction, improve sustainable organic production, increased yield, and better nutritional quality and improved resilience. Soil organic matter is at the crossroads of the three main Rio Conventions. In the UNCCD, soil organic matter and SLM is on the agenda as drought and other issue is one of the LDN target. Soil organic matter is also a key issue for the AFOLU sector in mitigation and adaptation action promoted by UNFCCC. Soil organic matter, by increasing soil biodiversity and associated ecosystem services such as nutrient cycling, is part of the ARCI target. That means it's part of the CBD convention. Soil organic matter is also closely related to SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 2, zero hunger, SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, SDG 13, climate action, and of course SDG 15, particularly target 15.3, since soil organic matter is one of the three indicators for land degradation neutrality. Sustainable land management can strengthen the pivotal role of soil organic matter. If the management works at the land where it is used, say that in another word, do the right thing at the right place. By doing the right thing at the right place requires information. What SLM practices is feasible and appropriate? What SLM will maximize increases and or avoid loss of soil organic carbon? What SLM will maximize multiple benefits? The technical report addressed where soil organic matter is a priority indicator for LDN, and these above question. I leave the floor to my colleague Hermias.
Yeah, thank you, and then hello, and then good morning, respected delegates. And then it's also a real great pleasure for the Secretariat to give us this opportunity to present what we have been working for the last 1 year and a half, almost 2 years. And then as my colleague mentioned, I think, soil organic carbon, soil in general is really, the foundation of our development, our civilization. And then also, our well-being, in fact, is really starting from the soil, which is really very exciting. So in this technical report that mentioned by my colleagues, I think it is led by two of us, Jean-Luc and then myself, and then there are contributing authors to this report. And then also there are internal reviewers that you see their name here. And then also external reviewers, which we are really extremely thankful because it is because of the contribution of all these people that we are able to come up with the final product that we are presenting today before you. Yes, and then just to give you a little bit of highlight, the approach we followed, I think the first thing we did was, we really hired expert consultants to do a thorough literature review and an understanding, the existing knowledge in this area. And then all this was really consolidated into, evaluation of, for instance, soil organic carbon management and then monitoring, and then particularly also sustainable land management. And then this was the basis to come up with the technical report, which is a draft technical report. And the technical report was developed using this background report. Then it was really submitted for internal and an external review. And then finally, a summary of the technical report was provided by the chair of the CST and then reviewed by the Bureau of COP. So this is the final product, how it came up and then presented today. And then the basic thing that this technical report contained are the following. I think the basic thing it will help parties particularly is that, what is the best use of existing information? Because we don't want really to, completely new things, but we really review existing knowledge because we feel that there is a lot on the ground, but they are not really consolidated and then well guided for use. So to identify sustainable land practices and approaches for maintaining or enhancing soil organic carbon, that is a basic guide that we're going to give us from the technical report. And then identifying gaps in information that are necessary and then valuable to fill the support of management of soil organic carbon to LDN. And then the final one is, filling the gaps in information through soil organic carbon measurement monitoring. So in this case, we are not really urging everyone to do, soil organic carbon measurement everywhere. So it depends on the context because every country could be having a different position. So we really took all this into consideration and we put a kind of, a classical guideline how to make this kind of, information. So I think the basic thing which came up is really soil organic carbon. It could be really something that we could lose it very quickly, and then it takes real time and effort to maintain it. So I think that is what we need to bear in mind, because in any intervention that we do today could not reverse the whole process very quickly. So I think following the response hierarchy of avoiding loss and then reducing degradation, and then also reversing as taking as a last resort is really interesting. And then sustainable land management can be used to avoid these determined effects and then give multiple benefits. I think that is also very classically said also here. Changing soil organic carbon stocks are more challenging, and then particularly monitoring is a challenge for many countries, and then also experts, we know it. And then if you compare it with the other two indicators, for instance, land productivity and the land cover change, which could really benefit a lot from remote sensing and modeling, I think soil organic carbon is much more challenging than the two other indicators. So to establish the relationship between soil organic carbon and sustainable land management, that was also the challenge in terms of also literature. We don't have much evidence to show that this kind of sustainable land management could help enhancing or maintaining soil organic carbon. So what we suggest in the future is that I think we need to have also some benchmark agroecologists by which we need to monitor and then learn from these processes over the years and then really adapt our management recommendations. Because what we know is what recommending is what we know so far, but I mean in the future we really suggest to have this kind of a learning landscape by which we can have a continuous understanding and then take it further. That's the basic things. And then the way the technical report and organized is in the form of a decision trees by which a decision maker at the country level like you, and then there are also land managers, for instance, who are really technically implementing the actual land degradation neutrality activities using sustainable land management. And then how do you really interact? I think the gap is really how to read each other and then make a better informed decision in that case. So for this case, I think we made most of the report you see in Objective 1.1 is in a form of decision trees by which decision makers could go through it and then be able to interact with the land managers. So the guide normally and then will help us where investment in soil organic carbon assessment and monitoring are recommended to track the impact of sustainable land management implementation and to support monitoring of land degradation neutrality and then achieve soil organic carbon change by 2030. So that is really what the technical report is going to support you with. So I think the basic answers it could give you for in this case is that, what is the best use of existing information to identify sustainable land management practices and an appropriate approach to maintaining or enhancing soil organic carbon, because we are often continuously saying that it's not about increasing soil organic carbon. I think maintaining the soil organic carbon and avoiding loss is also extremely critical. And then identifying gaps in information that are necessary and then valuable to fill the support management of soil organic carbon for LDN, and then filling gaps in information. And then if you go and then read the technical report, I think this is where the decision trees and then the specific page that could help you really to identify and then interact with land managers, and then I think hopefully it will help you to make a more informed decision, which is also scientifically based. So, and then these are the two products, and then the technical report, and then based on the technical report, we also developed a policy brief, which is very short, and then you can also have a look at it. And then based on these two documents, I think it is from this technical report that we are leading to the official document that you have in front of you. So these are the two, and then for the third product, which is developed by the Bureau. So I think based on all this, what you read, also what you have it is, we came up with 5 basic proposals. And then the first one is really, to encourage parties, particularly to employ sustainable land management for multiple benefits. I think the scale we are implementing sustainable land management need to be strengthened, because that is extremely key for multiple benefit. The climate, the biodiversity, and then the number of sustainable development goals that my colleague mentioned are extremely important. And then the use of soil organic carbon as a very basic indicator how sustainable land management is also performing, and then get feedback is also very important. And then aligning soil organic carbon monitoring with the national land degradation neutrality process is also a very useful thing that we are really encouraging parties to note. And then also sharing this guideline at the national and then subnational actors, the decision makers, and the land managers are extremely important, because I think if it is not shared, it might not be really used wisely. So I think we really encourage also the sharing of this product. So the second one is also encouraging parties in collaboration with relevant technical and financial partners to strengthen the national level coordination capacity for soil organic carbon measurement and monitoring. And then these are also some of the basic things that could really help parties to do that one. So strengthen the national capacity is very important, because oftentimes, we rely too much on external products and services, but having that national capacity in the country to deal with this thing is really what makes it really sustainable and exciting. So that is really what we are going to encourage as a part. So the third proposal here also is, inviting technical partners and which are specializing in land, sustainable land management, because there could be a number of other institutions. If you look at, some of the side events even which I attended yesterday, and there is a lot happening by experts, international, national research institutes, and then also a number of other actors are doing. So I think it would be really very interesting to really bring all this knowledge and potential into the in terms of sustainable land management, because it will really support investment decisions to make, and then also focuses interventions on zones where to prioritize what. I think it is really important to partner with institutions with technical strengths in that case. So also invite relevant technical partners. Soil organic carbon stock assessment is also very useful, because I think we have seen there are a lot of capacities at country level, at a national level, but oftentimes that coordination is a little bit loose. So I think there are opportunities to make use of regional and national and other actors within the country and then within the region, really to make the best out of the available knowledge and the skills. So the fifth and the last one is, which is also common with the other group, is that I think you need to really engage women and then gender issues into this whole process, starting from the planning. It's not about the implementation. So from the very beginning, I think we need to be very inclusive. And then I think specifically, we need to also empower women to really get engaged in this whole process. And then with that, I will end my presentation wishing a land degradation neutral world in the future. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Luke Schott and Mr. Batimeria. Ms. Mariodi Sanchez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, distinguished delegates. I would like to present the outcomes of the SPI technical report for Objective 1.2 on behalf of the co-leaders, Peter Verberg and Graciela Metternich, who unfortunately could not attend this meeting. Not yet.
Just wait a second. Marcelo is there. Now you have it.
Okay, perfect. This technical report is titled Creating an Enabling Environment for Land Degradation Neutrality and its Potential Contribution to Enhancing Well-being, Livelihoods, and the Environment. You can see here the names of the lead authors of this report, and also the names of the 9 co-authors, as well as the names of the 7 internal reviewers and the external reviewers as well. So this report is focused on the enabling environment for LDN, and the reason is because attaining and maintaining LDN requires of an adequate combination of contextual elements beyond sustainable land management and land restoration practices. And currently, the knowledge on effective configuration of these contextual elements to enable LDN need to be enhanced in order to contribute to the well-being and livelihoods of people affected by land degradation. You can see here in the graphic the links between an enabling environment and multiple benefits in the context of LDN. Measures that promote multiple benefits strengthen the enabling environment for LDN, and concurrently, the enabling environment can foster multiple benefits. Drawing from the literature, the enabling environment was considered to comprise 4 main dimensions. The first one, institutional, which is more about the organization of responsible agencies, mainstreaming LDN and land governance. The second one, financial, which means securing and streamlining financial resources. Policy and regulatory, which is about developing effective and widely supported land regulations. And the last one on science policy, that is about the dialogue between policy makers, scientists, and practitioners. The findings and key messages of this technical report were summarized in a policy brief for providing guidance to policymakers to support countries in their efforts to create an enabling environment for LDN planning and implementation. Both are now available in this COP as well, and in the UNCCD library, on the website for your consideration. About the methodology, the SPI used 3 approaches to delineate the evidence base on the configuration of the enabling environment for LDN and on the opportunities for multiple benefits. The first one is the literature review to summarize trends in land governance and assess the implications for LDN. More than 300 references were reviewed in this approach. The second approach was a global survey for capturing the perception of stakeholders involved in LDN at national level, including experts, practitioners, and 74 national focal points. And finally, the third approach was the review of 30 country reports on the LDN target setting program from all regions in order to contextualize the results of the survey. As you can see, the followed approach captures and combines different types of evidence, including the stakeholder perception. And this evidence was assessed in 2 background papers. The first one on the enabling environment for LDN, which was based on the survey analysis and the review of the LDN reports from countries. And the second background paper on the role and dynamics of land governance based on literature review. The insights from these 3 sources are triangulated to analyze the 4 dimensions of an enabling environment and to formulate policy proposals. I am going to present now a summary of the key messages that emerge from the report. And the first one on the institutional dimension of the enabling environment. A common national long-term vision and commitment to LDN is perceived as critical for the implementation of LDN. A common long-term vision was ranked in the survey as the most important measure to support LDN implementation. The analysis of evidence shows that the countries have good progress on LDN, particularly in establishing an LDN lead agency, but gaps remain in the mainstreaming of LDN targets, vertical coordination, and the overall political importance given to LDN amongst competing priorities. Some elements to consider for addressing this challenge are institutionalizing multi-stakeholder coordination mechanisms beyond the LDN target setting program, strengthening vertical integration mechanisms, and a better coordination of top-down and bottom-up actions, and ensuring horizontal and vertical institutional arrangements. On the science policy dimension of the enabling environment, it is important to build up awareness raising and understanding pertaining to LDN. The survey respondents rate the lack of awareness and understanding of LDN and the key concepts as a key challenge for LDN moving forward. Gaps in technical capacities for implementing LDN are apparent in both the survey and the LDN country reports. Some elements to consider to addressing this challenge are enhancing awareness through facilitated access to information on LDN beyond the lead entities already engaged, to develop novel context-sensitive land governance mechanisms, and to develop science-based methods to support land use planning, including the use of scenario analysis and assessment of trade-offs. On the financial dimension of the enabling environment, although a national budget for LDN is ranked as an important measure for implementation, few countries have assessed financial needs or secured finance to that end. Overall, a minority of survey respondents indicate that they have secured finance for LDN to date. So, some elements to consider here are conducting finance needs assessments at national and other levels for achieving each national LDN target, and also investing in capacity building for LDN monitoring based on national data availability and local expertise. On the policy and regulatory dimension of the enabling environment, the implementation of LDN measures relies heavily on responsible land governance, particularly land tenure and land use planning. Secure land tenure and access to land is ranked in the survey as an important measure for LDN implementation, while national capacity for securing land tenure arrangements is rated as low. Land tenure security and land use planning conditions are key for creating an enabling policy and regulatory environment, and there is a clear need to build national capacity for securing land arrangements and integral land use planning. Some elements to consider here are integrating land tenure security into national strategies to achieve LDN, recognizing customary land governance systems in national laws, following the voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance of tenure of land to manage the impacts of LDN in land tenure, accounting for actors involved in private land governance, and enhancing national capacities for effective implementation of integrated land use planning. The final key message is on multiple benefits. Stakeholders expect a range of multiple benefits as a result of LDN. The evidence gathered indicates that the level of multiple benefits that could be realized strongly depends on contextual conditions. And the survey results and the country reports highlight some important measures for leveraging multiple benefits, such as the full and effective participation of local communities and stakeholders, the mainstreaming of LDN into existing plans and programs, a greater engagement of central planning and finance ministries, the evaluation of economic, social, and environmental trade-offs during program designs, and the prioritization of livelihood outcomes. So, based on these key messages, the SPI has formulated the following policy proposals for creating an enabling environment for LDN to deliver multiple benefits. The first one is to ensure that LDN targets are mainstreamed in national strategies and national action plans in order to raise the profile of LDN in the national policy agenda to maintain and enhance well-being and livelihoods. Collaboration with technical and financial partners to assess finance and capacity development needs. To take into account the land tenure and land use planning conditions for creating and enabling policy and regulatory environment. Parties and cooperating partners working on science policy aspects relating to the enabling environment for LDN to further engage in raising awareness and understanding of LDN. To further engage in achieving multiple environmental, social, and economic benefits in the context of LDN, and to integrate gender-responsive actions on land use planning and LDN interventions. Well, with this, thank you very much for your kind attention, and I hand over to the chair now.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sanchez, for your presentation. I now open the floor for any questions or comments that you may have. I will take all the comments and then give the floor to the Secretariat and or the SPI representatives to respond. Delegates wishing to take the floor are invited to press the button. I give the floor to India.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, India appreciate the scientific work of SPI with regard to implementation of land degradation neutrality under Objective 1, 1.1 and 1.2. Sub-Objective 1.1 advice on the design and implementation of LDN related policies and initiatives that brings about multiple environmental and development benefits and synergies with other Rio conventions, in particular for climate change adaptation and mitigation actions. The sub-objective 1.2 is basically science-based evidence on the potential contribution of LDN to enhancing the well-being and livelihood as well as environmental condition. India also appreciates the two thematic assessment done by the SPI, and based on this, two very important technical reports are generated, that is realizing the carbon benefits of sustainable land management practices, guidelines for estimation of SOC, soil organic carbon, in context of land degradation neutrality, planning and monitoring. And the second report that is also very important, that is creating an enabling environment for land degradation neutrality and its potential contribution to enhancing well-being, livelihood and the environment. From these reports, India have taken a lot of notes, and we are already doing some other things from this, and we are using this report. This is very important report, and this important report will help to the country for making their national and state level policies. India also mentioned about these, we also agree about to promote the sustainable land management technologies for achieving LDN. We have established methodologies for measuring soil organic carbon, which may also be aligned for monitoring of LDN targets. We also appreciate the develop gender responsive LDN interventions, scaling up best practices through institutional arrangements, facilitate enabling financial environment for LDN, creating, reforming a policy on land tenure and land using planning, thus achieving social and economic benefits in the context of LDN. We also appreciate the last COP13, wherein this issue with regard to land tenure were also initiated. And India also want to just mention about the very important thing, that the period of strategic plan for biodiversity 2011 to 20 with 20 global IQ targets, which was adopted in 2010, under the aegis of conventions on biological diversity and which provides an overarching framework on biodiversity for related conventions including UNCCD and the entire UN system would be ending in 2020. Accordingly, the COP14 to the CBD held last year in 2018 by its decision 14/13 has laid down a parties-led process for development of post-2020 global biodiversity framework that will follow the strategic plan and key targets. The government of India also conducted many of the studies. I'm just giving some idea about one of the study, that is economics of desertification, land degradation and drought, and desertification status mapping for India. India also agrees to deliberate on the issue of land tenure in the contact group, and just want to tell about very one of the important finding of this study. In this report, the attempt has been made in this study to take a wider perspective of land degradation. Two major aspects of land degradation are very important. First is the cost of land degradation on a given land use, and the second, the cost of arises when the land moves from a more to a less productive. As in terms of scientific, we can say it is as measured by total economic value or TEV use. In the first category, losses within agriculture, forestry and rangelands are looked at. In the second category, changes with the official 9-category land use classification followed in India, as well as wetland are also looked at. Based on this, India definitely is also following these are the policies and the methodology mentioned in this report. And once again, I appreciate the very outstanding work done by the SPI. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, India. I would entreat parties to make their comments very precise so we can save time. And parties wishing to take the floor should press the button so we can register on our screen, and we invite you. I now invite Argentina to take the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Chairman. At the outset, and since this is the first time Argentina is taking the floor, we would like to thank the people and the government of India for giving us this opportunity to visit this wonderful country. And indeed, we're facing serious challenges in this region related to the sustainable management of land. And the government has carried out some very important work on these issues. Secondly, I'd like to thank the Secretariat and the Committee on Science and Technology for the last 2 years of work. And we see this from the reports from the SPI, and I'd like to thank all of the actors involved for the work that was carried out. And we understand it was done with full of technology, science, and the hearts of the experts. I'd like to return to Objective 1.1. And the interface elected as the focus or as the objective of the study for the mandate that is being proposed in terms of working and strengthening our work against land degradation, selected 1.1 as one of the primary indicators, the indicator of sustainable use. And in this respect, this indicator depends on the functioning of each ecosystem and the different weight that it has in different types of lands, productive lands, fertile lands. So it is different in different situations. For example, in arid lands, which is indeed the main focus of this convention, and also in carbon storage. And in the process of preparing our national report in Argentina, and also the establishment of neutrality objectives, we have identified the fact that the importance, or the relative importance related to the other two indicators, the productivity of land reaches only 2% out of the overall indicator. So therefore, for Argentina, we would like to propose or receive some additional explanations, explanations related to the role of arid lands and carbon. And also would like to draw your attention to the fact that carbon capture relates primarily to productive lands, and in countries like Argentina, where 70% of our lands are arid lands, we have difficulties in terms of ensuring the storage of carbon in these lands due to the lack of the structure of arid lands that make this very difficult, and also the low levels of population and the great size of lands also complicates the situation. So I'd like to request the international community to help us generate national capacities to work on this indicator under the convention. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. We now have Senegal. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, since I'm taking the floor for the first time, please allow me to very sincerely thank the government and people of India. I thank them for facilitating this conference and for their warm hospitality. I would also like to thank the Secretariat for the efforts they have undertaken. We also welcome the results and proposals set out by the SPI for the goals of our group. I think their work is very important for the development of an integration of LDN in sectoral policies. It's also important to look at how to operationalize all of these proposals. It's very important to ensure ownership of these concepts at all levels. In the two reports, there's a need highlighted to strengthen scientific data. This is very important, in particular for organic carbon in soils. So it's very important to develop synergies between the conventions for this. In the reports presented, most of the information has been requested from countries at global level. So we need capacity building within the countries themselves so that they can provide reliable information, but also we need more awareness raising at global level. One concern is that we have to produce brief policies, but he also has to demonstrate the interest of adopting LDN policies, in particular with regards to how to take into account economic consequences, return on investment, and other issues. I think it's important to specify these so that we can really demonstrate the interest and the benefits of adopting land degradation neutrality policies. Complementarity, synergies, and partnerships with other organizations are also very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senegal. We now have the United States taking the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the SPI on its work. It has significantly increased both the quantity and quality of science made available in a form that can be used to support the work of the Convention and of the parties. We would also like to support Argentina's reference to the importance of focusing particularly on the unique sustainable land management challenges we face in dry lands. Thank you.
Thank you, U.S., for your brief comment. We now have Morocco. Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. So on behalf of the Moroccan delegation, we'd also like to thank the government of India for their welcome and for their efforts in hosting this COP. So the report under Objective 1 of SPI is quite a comprehensive report. It's touched upon nearly all aspects. But I have a certain number of comments to make, in particular with regard to sub-objectives 1.1 and 1.2. In the conclusions, I would really like to highlight that we have to convey a message. We have to convey a message from the United Nations on the three conventions. The Convention on Desertification is really linked to the effects of climate change and the effects of biodiversity loss. These conventions are all linked, but our convention is really a hub, a focal point, which should really call upon the world to turn its attention towards it. We need all scientists, all stakeholders to really focus on this issue. We should not consider it as a poor relation. Desertification is not just solely linked to land degradation. I think that's a good choice of words now that we have. Desertification affects many other issues and affects everybody. So we have to also set out an international system of coordination at global level, which will really stimulate coordination. Because I think coordination between the three conventions is an issue. And I think the UN system has thought about this issue of coordination. The OSS in Northern Africa is working on this, for example. But we have to extend this further. In the report, we've spoken about human well-being. So we need targeted action in terms of LDN to improve human well-being. I think we should really highlight that within LDN programs, plans and policies, within our domestic plans, first and foremost, we have to really target this objective of LDN. In addition to this, we need programs to improve activities as a whole with regards to LDN. And in particular with regards to revenue for people. If people have revenue, they won't degrade land, they won't impoverish soils, and they won't weaken productivity. I think that's one big issue. We need to ensure revenue for people. And in terms of territorial management, this is also an issue. I think this is gaining in scope and importance as well. In Morocco, there are studies at national level by national organizations on how to improve territorial management. I really think that this will be a great issue now and in the future. And a realistic approach is needed in order to ensure sustainable territorial management. So within territorial management plans, we have to ensure that LDN is included in these. So the report talks about zoning, for example, but in developing countries there is a certain issue. Often we don't respect the ecological nature of land. We have to place a greater emphasis on the ecological nature, the ecological capacity of land. If you respect land in this regard, then I think you'll be able to combat degradation and you'll be able to achieve land degradation neutrality. For example, people grow tomatoes in dry lands, carry out intensive agriculture in areas with very little water available, and then this leads to very unfortunate circumstances. In terms of security, I think I would add that land security and land tenure security needs to be linked to land degradation neutrality. So we need to ensure that there's no land grabbing. We need to ensure that there's really a respect for the capacity and nature of land. Because often you have land that's not appropriate, that's transformed into agricultural land, and which then becomes desert land. If we look at the Amazon forest, for example, now, we're seeing it being converted to agriculture, intensive agriculture, the growing of potatoes, for example. And that's not respecting the true nature, the true capacity of land. So I think if we do this, that will be the right path to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Morocco. Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This is my first time to take the floor. I would like to express our gratitude and appreciation to the governments of India and people in hosting the COP14 with warm welcome and hospitality. Also, thanks HPI for hard work, come up with fruitful scientific information and policy proposals. Combat land degradation and restoration degraded land is essential for well-being of people in affected areas, including protecting biodiversity ecosystem and minimize vulnerabilities of climate change impact in terms of enabling environments for LDN. Information, knowledge, and decision support tools is to identify land degradation prevention and restoration options is important. Recently, Thailand are working with FAO and WOCAT on WOCAT land degradation and SLM assessment to increase capacities of the country in identifying green and hotspots, suitable SLM technologies, and approach and helping to identify suitable area for interventions. The outcomes of the work contributes directly to LDN in case of scaling up and mainstreaming SLM, and also promotes SLM sharing to UNCCD Knowledge Hub and best practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thailand. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The document COP CST2 and the previous presentation showed that a substantial and detailed systematic work was carried on by the SPI. We acknowledge this achievement, and we would like to thank the members of the SPI, but also the UNCCD Secretariat for their commitment. Switzerland regrets that due to the earlier date of the conference, the two technical reports of the SPI mentioned in the document were not available enough in advance in order to be able to conduct more detailed review and allow more informed discussion at the CST. In the conclusion and recommendation of the CST2 document, soil organic carbon is highlighted as a key indicator for the LDN. We totally agree that the soil organic carbon is a key biophysical indicator to measure progress toward the UNCCD strategic objectives 1, 2, 3, and 4. But on national level, other indicators or criteria are also important when land use planning and policy decisions are made. And Switzerland is wondering how other criteria such as economic and social indicators should be taken into account when deciding about priorities where to implement the SLM practices to meet the UNCCD targets. Switzerland recognized the quality and usefulness of the framework for the management of soil organic carbon for LDN and the associated decision tree. However, we are not sure at this stage that the sub-objective 1.1 of the SPI was fully captured. Regarding trade-offs between climate mitigation and other objectives such as poverty reduction or biodiversity conservation, how can these trade-offs be addressed and reconciled in such a process? Switzerland believes that the recommendations stemming from the SPI reports will need a better structure. We suggest regrouping all soil organic carbon relevant matters which would maintain the focus on this soil organic carbon importance while emphasizing other UNCCD and LDN objectives such as land tenure or security or gender balance. Land tenure is highlighted as an important enabling factor, and Switzerland shares the view that sources of land tenure insecurity should be addressed and focusing only on land titling should be avoided. Switzerland also supports gender-responsive land governance intervention. Finally, any decision to be taken by the CST and subsequently by the COP in the context of LDN and the voluntary LDN target has to be coherent with the relevant COP12 decisions and their language, as well as with the strategic framework 2018-2030. Furthermore, decisions that address parties need to take into account the difference between affected and non-affected parties. This differentiation should be reflected appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Shukran. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank the SPI for its scientific report. I have a clarification to make about an important point. Given that I participated in issues related to biological surveys, usually we face an important problem related to access to information. As you well know, that the scientific team has developed certain criteria which emphasize on availability of scientific reports, particularly with regards to lands. The problem is that developed countries can access information very easily. However, the areas which are really impacted by climate change and face problems have difficulty accessing information which allow them to analyze results, to build on this information so that to reach certain kind of recommendations and conclusions. In this regard, we have faced this information problem in IPCC when tackling the same question that we are tackling today. So I think that the report reflects the gaps with regards to access information on which we have to build to reach recommendations. And we have to find a way out of this difficulty with regarding to availability and access of information. And thank you.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. We now have the Niger. Niger, you have the floor. Is it Niger? Sorry, Niger, yes, Niger, you have the floor.
No? It's good? Okay. Donc, je commence mon intervention.
I'd like to start my statement by thanking India for the warm welcome that they have given us. It's a beautiful country from a cultural and natural standpoint. I would like to speak in particular about soil organic carbon and the LDN process. For those that don't know Niger, we are an arid country where land degradation is the main issue we face. People are suffering from this problem. But our country is striving to fight this issue through land restoration activities and the sustainable management of land. Nevertheless, although within this LDN process we can commend many actions taken, we often find that we need a great amount of resources to implement a monitoring system for the efforts that are being undertaken. So we need to carry out this monitoring by implementing baselines before taking action, so that we can then correctly measure what has been done after the action has been taken. So that's the concept of observatories. In order to really assess, we have to observe. So we have set out observatories, but we need funds for this. In terms of priorities, though, our country tends to encourage restoration. So I think within the process to find financing, we have to look at ways to better observe. My second point relates to the sustainability of LDN processes. I think that so that LDN can be a durable process, we have to integrate it within environmental education processes. So we have to educate people at all levels on LDN so that people can learn about the concepts of this issue. That will help people better understand the need for action. Once all these conditions are met, I think that planet Earth can be lived in an eternal manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Niger, Iraq, you have the floor now.
CST for this opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I will speak in Arabic to be the idea cleared. I'm Dr. Muhammad Al-Zuhairi, Assistant Professor in University of Technology in Iraq, Baghdad. Also, I have NGO is working on environment development. My idea is about how to improve the scientific and technology researches, especially in land degradation field, and support the capacity in organic carbon measuring and monitoring in developing countries. في الحقيقة
It goes without saying that the researches that have been achieved already and conducted in developing countries, particularly in Iraq, are of academic nature, 100% academic. These researches are not tapped into in order to solve environmental problems or protect the lands. Universities in Iraq, as well as in developing countries, are sites of consumption of funds and financial resources, instead of being sites of production of new technologies and contributing to the financial and economic development of the country, as well as providing necessary scientific resources, particularly with regards to land degradation. As you all know, this is an issue which is basically global. It happens both ways, and there is a gap in this regard which we have to bridge by transferring technology and information to the developing countries. We have the following proposal. It is to develop a strategic research plan that is in line with the goals and decisions of COP14 and also to transfer technology and information. This way, we will ensure the participation of developing countries in discovering new technologies in order to ensure LDN and combat drought and for better management of water resources. We should also disseminate culture of land protection, provide also development in developing countries by ensuring employment and developing the economy and ensuring livelihood and food. All these proposals will ensure stability of these countries, political, social, and security stability of these countries, which will further consolidate global security and combating terrorism. Also, we should facilitate the work of the UNCCD and achieve COP14 plans and goals. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Iraq. We now have South Africa. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first want to thank the Secretariat for getting me eventually to India. It was a great challenge, but I'm here. Thank you very much for all the people at the Secretariat for getting me in the last minute. Yes, I want to also thank the SPI for the wonderful work that they are doing, and the reports and also the useful policy briefs. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to study all the reports and policy briefs because I only got them today. We only had time in the African Regional Group meeting to study this document that was available on the internet, and I'm referring to ICCD COP14/CST/2, and I would like to have some clarification, please, especially when we go to page 17, item 50C, conclusion 3 of the document. We from South Africa and some other African states wondered why the word after conclusions 3 states a framework for the management of soil organic carbon to support the achievement of LDN will be most effective if it promotes gender equality, enables women, and why the word youth was left out, to invest in natural resources. Maybe we need some clarification about the word youth, why it was not included. The only reason is maybe because youth is defined and classified in different countries differently. And that is why the word youth, but we would like to emphasize the word youth in that paragraph. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, South Africa. And I give the floor to Egypt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. أشكركم جزيلا.
Thank you, President. I speak in my capacity as representative of Egypt in the CST. I'm also the head of the CST Bureau in the Arab Group. Egypt suffered a great deal of the issue of organic carbon in soil. We reiterated time and again this issue with Madam Sagar, who used to discuss this issue with us. We said to her that in Egypt, as well as in the Arab group, we are facing a staggering challenge with regard to the precision of our reports on LDN. This is clear also in the Arab report that we'll be presenting in COP14. And it's the case with all Arab reports, which appears to be suffering from preciseness with regards to depicting the level of organic carbon in soil, which affects also the precise nature of reports on LDN. Mr. President, we have talked about this issue in Pretoria, and we stressed in the African group that stocks of carbon and their measurement on a large scale over a long period of time constitutes an important challenge facing African countries as well. With regards to drought, on this front we face also yet another challenge, which is the different definitions of drought from one region to another. As you all know, countries around the world differ in terms of their water resources. Therefore, there is varying definitions of droughts. In Egypt, we have published the report on drought. It shows that we have 3 agricultural regions, and in every region there is a difference with regards to the definition of drought in each of these 4 regions, given they have different water resources. There is also the other issue of indicators. In the African group in Pretoria, we talked about the important work of the UNCCD, because it provides indicators that are easy to use and apply. We also said that the FAO lately has developed an easy-to-use indicator, and Mr. President, we request the FAO to make this indicator available to parties, particularly in the developing countries, because this will allow us to measure the negative impacts of droughts and to determine the difficult periods of drought. Before closing, though I should have started my statement with this, I should have started with expressing thanks and appreciation to the people and government of India for the hospitality they have extended to us during our stay in this very respected country. I should have also thanked in particular the Secretariat of the UNCCD for the work which unfolds day after day, and I hope that this COP will be as successful as we all wish. I'd like also to express my thanks to the SPI for the 3 reports, outstanding reports, which really an important addition to combating droughts, and thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Egypt. We now have Bahrain to take the
বলছে বাহরাইন বলছে তো
স্যার বাহরাইন বাংলাদেশ
বলছে Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the Government of India for hosting COP14. And also, I would like to express my deep gratitude to the Secretariat of UNCCD for inviting me to this August gathering. Mr. Chair, in Bangladesh, we have set LDN target that will be achieved. We shall try to achieve by 2030, and also we are now preparing the land degradation profiling. And in doing so, we have seen that drivers of land degradation not always resides in inside the country, but sometimes it is transboundary in nature. For example, Bangladesh shares, or Bangladesh, we have 57 transboundary rivers, and the upstream withdrawal of water affects the downstream country like Bangladesh. So we would like to urge the Secretariat to see into the regional matters to achieve land degradation neutrality, and also urge to find out a scientific solution how we can manage our waters in order to achieve land degradation neutrality. And also we would like to urge the Secretariat to mobilize adequate resources for achieving land degradation neutrality, and also we need capacity building for the country parties like Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bangladesh. I think there is a mix-up there in the sitting arrangement. You've got to sit where you are expected to. So when you press the button, we can see your sitting position on the screen. We are sorry for the mix-up. That was Bangladesh. We now give the floor to Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the beginning, I would like to thank the government and people of India for very warm hosting. And then I would like to thank SPI for very fruitful presentation. I learned a lot about many advantages of using carbon indicator, but I'm going to raise some points about this indicator. First, in contradiction to the two other indicators, variations of carbon is very gradual and not too much sensitive, especially in 4-year span, aim to get country reports on progress of on LDN for Kerik. Especially, it is more serious problem in arid lands and degraded lands, rangelands in arid lands. Second, it needs a lot of land data. So I think that a lot of improvement is needed in RS technology towards carbon satellite-based measuring. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Iran. We now give the floor to Italy. Italy, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. And first of all, Italy aligns itself on the EU statement already done. We prepared all together the statement performed by the Finland on our behalf. And as this is the Italy first intervention, I would thank the host country as well the Secretariat for the efforts done on organizing such a so big event in India. Well, we appreciated very much the precious work done by the SPI, and we consider their report as first step to develop specific guidelines to adapt the general framework model for the LDN or for LDN activities to the national specific conditions. As you know, many of you know, Italy joined the LDN project from its first phase. So let me to affirm that we consider ourselves as a pioneer country in this exercise. And among the lessons learned up to now, we underline the importance for synergies and the integration between national programs and actions in the framework of the old Rio Convention as well as other MEAs. And they also for their related reporting process in order to improve the efficiencies or results needed and the coherence of the national communication. Now, we, as Italy, we are in the phase to review data and indicators. As you know, Earth observation techniques are developing so fast that we need to review the work done so far in order to refine assessment produced and consequently targets proposed to decision makers and on the way to be integrated in national tools and programs related to land management. And once again, we would thank the SPI to produce very useful and updated reports to accompany our work. As a first success of our activities is the land degradation and desertification as inclusion as a priority sector in the national strategy for climate change adaptation, and moreover, the SDG target 15.3 is already included in the targets that Italy adopted, voluntarily adopted in the framework of the National Strategy for Sustainable Development in the framework of Agenda 2030. The recent IPCC special report on land and climate change additionally encourage us to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Italy. Now I'll give the floor to Indonesia. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I would like to appreciate the remarkable work of the SPI. I hope this work will be useful to our country, especially in monitoring soil and organic carbon. But let me give few common related to this work, especially in figure 1, I will give the comment about how the scale of work that we can modeling to assess the dimensional of soil organic matter, because in that figure we have to have a direct measurement. We have to supplement it with the scale work that we, as we know that this scale level will influence the data accuracy. So give me a exact level of work so we can build a model more accurate. And in addition, we need to, how is the threshold that we can say that our soil management, land use management is success using indicator soil organic carbon. How much is the increase carbon, how many percent that we can in a few years. And in national and local level, it must be any difference that we have to use different data. Thank you.
Thank you, Indonesia. Niger, you have requested for the floor again. I give you the floor.
Yeah, Chair, I want to speak on behalf of the African group. Yeah, Chair, on the presentation that was made before us, we, the African group, appreciates the significant effort of the UNCCD Secretariat and the SPI that produced the deliverable under Objective 2 of the work program for the biennium 2018-2019, and concludes that the content and conclusions presented in the document and the proposed recommendations largely meet the requirements and mandates provided under Decision 21/COP13 and 29/COP13. The group, however, proposes for adoption the following recommendation. On recommendation 1, that is intended to address the fragmented approach to drought risk and land management policy. To this effect, the group proposed some minor editorial in the first 2 bullet points as follows. The first bullet is invite parties to consider strengthening and prioritizing the interlinkage between national land and the national drought policies, and considering changing, revitalizing the policies to fully reflect the influence of land use and management degradation on water management availability and scarcities. On the third bullet, and consider the positive role of drought and smart land management practices could have in building the resilience of communities and ecosystem to drought one pursued in the context of LDN. The group was of the view, Chair, that the recommendation did not have clarity as to what parties are expected to do in considering the positive role of SDN, SLM, and request further clarity on what the message is intended to achieve. On DSLM, the group appreciates the value of drought smart land management approaches in reducing land degradation, improving land productivity, and achieving LDN. The group is of the view that presenting DSLM as a new concept is somehow confusing, as drought smart land management is seen with the broader context of sustainable land management practices that could be applied to improve ecosystem resilience to drought and attainment of LDN. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Niger. Niger, we've taken note of the position, and your comments will be part of the agenda item to be dealt with tomorrow afternoon. We give the floor to Sudan. Sudan, I invite you to take the floor.
شكرا السيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Chair. At the outset, I would like to thank you for giving me the floor, and I would like to thank the government and people of India for organizing this conference of parties to the Convention to Combat Desertification. I also would like to thank the Science and Technology Committee for the enormous efforts that have been taken in order to put into place the different programs that are related to droughts and LDN. I also would like to thank everybody for the work taken under the convention over the last 25 years. And over these years, the programs of the Committee on Science and Technology have shown the importance of soil organic carbon, especially in African countries. In our countries, it is very difficult to have information on this subject. And I have a question related to opportunities that African countries may have in order to make it possible for our countries to have additional data broken down by countries in additional to information related at the global level, especially information related to soils that limits our possibility to limit the process of land degradation and also to increase the level of organic carbon in our soils. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudan. Distinguished delegates, we're running out of time. I have Syria and Oman on my list. Would invite them to speak, then we can adjourn and continue in the afternoon. So, Syria, you have the floor.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. بداية اسمحوا لي أن
Thank you, Chair. At the outset, I'd like to thank the Republic of India for convening the 14th COP. And we would like to thank the Secretariat for the excellent level of preparations of the meeting. We pay tribute to the efforts of the SBI for its 2018 report and also other documents that were presented to us. During 2017, Syria managed to attain the indicators related to land degradation broken down on 5 levels: hydro resources, climate change, social and economic conditions, and others. And we have used these indicators in order to monitor the process of desertification and also to evaluate this process. In terms of neutrality and degradation, we have 3 indicators that were adopted by the Convention. Nevertheless, there are also significant difficulties related to the monitoring of levels of soil organic carbon. And this is related to the difficulties that we face in obtaining relevant data and the high level of costs. And this is why I think that these difficulties to adopt soil organic carbon as an indicator should be taken into account in order to use this indicator to monitor the neutrality of lands and also for sustainable land management, because this requires technical support and also financial support. Thank you.
Thank you, Syria. I now give the floor to Oman.
Thank you. شكرا سيد الرئيس. في البداية أود أن أتوجه.
I'd like to thank you, Chairman. At the outset, I'd like to express my gratitude to the government of India for the high level of hospitality and the organization of this meeting, and thank the Secretariat for organizing and preparing the meeting. The UNCCD provides numerous benefits for countries, and we need synergies on all of the issues and full transparencies. And we need a mechanism that relates to soil organic carbon. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Oman. Distinguished delegates, we would adjourn this meeting and we'll continue in our discussions on agenda item 2A in the afternoon. We would also take responses from the SPI and the Secretariat when we reconvene in the afternoon. This meeting is adjourned.